Hello, my name is Lori Page Hall, Director of Product Innovation at Levitt & James. Today we're going to take the second of two classes on using Best Authority Premium to build a table of authorities. This video is designed for people who have already watched the Best Authority 101 tutorial or had equivalent classroom training. In the first class, we learned how to create a TOA from startup through building the TOA. In this class, we're going to learn how easy it is to use Best Authority to solve any kind of problem on the fly and get our TOA out on time. We will be learning additional TOA editing techniques that were not covered in the first class, as well as showing some tips and tricks along the way. I want to remind you to reference our help system anytime you need assistance using Best Authority. From the Help drop-down on the BA ribbon, you can access the User Guide, Quick Reference Card, Video Tutorials, and the TOA Advisor. The TOA Advisor is a special help function which will guide you from problem to solution. I'll show you later how you can consult the TOA Advisor during review. In our first class, we discussed the edit, mark, unmark, and suppress functions. We also showed that when we found problems in the document, we could simply fix them in the document using Microsoft Word. For this class, we will discuss some of the editing tools we see on the Review ribbon that were not previously covered. You may remember from the first class that we proved our TOA in two phases. In Phase 1, we scrolled through the highlighted document looking for places where Best Authority marked something which does not belong in the TOA, or places where Best Authority marked too much or too little text for a long citation, or places where Best Authority marked suspects which show up in red in the document. In Phase 2, we examined the TOA preview and the review tree, looking for places where we needed to correct the way that the TOA data was presented as a table of authorities. For example, we learned that we can edit the text of an authority as it will appear in the TOA without modifying anything in the text of the original document. Today, we'll learn a couple of new techniques which will help us in Phase 1 when we're fixing suspects. However, the bulk of our time will be spent in Phase 2. We'll keep in mind that some of you may be proofing the TOA on your own in that you'll be making all of the decisions and doing the edits on the spot, while others will be working from a paper copy which has been marked up by an attorney or paralegal. We've prepared a sample document which demonstrates all sorts of issues which require attention, and we'll see how easy it is to clean things up and to handle special requirements for a particular court or attorney. For example, we'll learn what to do when a citation is fragmented into two suspects in the document and needs to be combined. There are multiple suspects which occur because the attorney has cited section numbers without explicitly naming the code every time. There are several subsections of a single authority cited, and the attorney wishes to have them combined in the TOA as one entry. There are two very different sections of the same code cited together in the document, and the attorney wishes to have them split apart. The attorney has cited the same code repeatedly in different parts of the document, sometimes spelled out and sometimes abbreviated, and we wish to be consistent in the way that they show in the TOA. We'll also learn how to get Best Authority to create subgroups, which is a popular form of formatting, especially in California. And finally, we'll learn how to combine simple techniques such as the search function and cut and paste to get a lot of work done quickly and easily. Let's get started. Just as in the first class, we'll open a training document. For this class, we will use BestAuth Sample 102 Premium.docx. After you've watched this tutorial, you can open this same document and try out these techniques for yourself. Remember, if you have a blank document open in Word, you can use the Open Training Document button on the Best Authority ribbon to access all our training documents. Now let's quickly go through the startup and scan steps and proceed into the review. If you need help with any of these steps, please refer to the BA 101 tutorial. Let's click Startup to begin the TOA process. The scheme we will use for this document is Scheme for BA 102. I want to draw your attention to the Scheme Overrides section of this dialog. As you may remember, schemes in Best Authority hold all of the options for the organization and format of your TOA. We've made available some of these options as overrides to your chosen scheme. For example, this scheme for BA 102 excludes quoted citations and mentions. For this document, if we wanted to include quoted citations in our TOA, we could simply uncheck this box. For purposes of this tutorial, we will leave it checked. We will now set our scan range and then set the TOA output location. On the scan dialog, the only option we need to choose is the state abbreviation. So we'll choose California, then click Scan and Review to scan the document for citations and go directly to review mode. For this tutorial, we'll spend most of our time in review mode, covering more TOA editing techniques. I'm not going to show you every page you would see if you were scrolling through the document in order to proof it end to end, but I will be stopping to show you the suspects that you would find in this sample document. The easiest way to navigate to the suspects group is to collapse all the groups using the first button above the review tree, then click the arrow next to suspects to expand that group. The first suspect we see is the Hunter suspect. The problem is that a single citation has been split into two suspects due to extraneous text in between. Remember the TOA advisor I told you about earlier? Let's consult the TOA advisor to find out how we can fix this suspect. We can access the TOA advisor from the Help drop-down on the ribbon or from the right-click menu in the review tree. The first problem listed in the TOA advisor under Suspects is that a citation appears split into two suspects with extra text in between. That's the same problem that we have with the Hunter site. When we click on this heading, possible causes and solutions are shown for this problem. The first possible cause gives an example similar to the Aguilar case we saw in the 101 tutorial, where the non-highlighted text should have been included in the citation. That occurred because the text in question was not italicized, but is part of the citation. However, the second example cause is very similar to the Hunter problem we are currently trying to solve, because the extraneous text is not part of the citation. The solution tells us, in the review pane tree, highlight the two suspects, and from the ribbon or right-click context menu, choose Combine Split Authority. Let's close the TOA advisor and see how this is done. In the review pane, we simply select the suspect with the first half of Hunter, then hold the Control button and click on the suspect with the second half. Next, we right-click and choose Combine Split Authority. By the way, this method of selecting items using Control-click or Shift-click only works in the review pane, not the highlighted document. We check to make sure the authority appears as we wish. Then we click the OK button. The Hunter authority has now been added to the Cases group. To quickly get back to the Suspects group, we simply click the Back button. The next suspect that we see is merely a phrase in a heading and not an actual citation. Let's just unmark this suspect. Next, we see a suspect that has nothing but a section number and doesn't say explicitly what code it's referring to. However, if we look at what precedes it in the previous paragraph, it would appear that it is citing the California Code of Civil Procedure. In fact, if we look back at the review tree, we can see that there are a number of similar items which have been classified as suspects that only contain section symbols and numbers. When a case deals extensively with a single area of law or code title, the attorney will sometimes cite section numbers or rules by themselves, such as we see here. Best Authority will classify such sections as suspects, and they'll appear as the suspects we see in this document. If we look back at a footnote near the beginning of the document, the author tells us that any subsequent references by section number only are referring to the California Code of Civil Procedure. But how do we get Best Authority to properly classify these suspects? Well, we could individually edit each one and type California Code of Civil Procedure at the start, but there's an easier way. We can use the Replace Text feature to take care of all of these at once. Note that the Replace Text feature is similar to Word's Search and Replace feature. However, it only changes the TOA data for the authority entry, not the document text itself. Let's see how this is done. In order to make sure that we've got all the suspects that we wish to modify grouped together, let's change the sort order of the suspects group from sequential to smart sort. We could edit the group properties to change the sorting order, but we've given you a shortcut. Just right-click on the group name and choose Set to Smart Sort. Now, in the Review pane, we'll select the relevant suspects, right-click, and choose Replace Text. We'll ask Best Authority to find instances of the section symbol and replace them with California Code of Civil Procedure, space, section symbol. Note that the replacement will be made on the selected authorities only. This is important if you have other citations in a group and you don't want to replace their authority text as well. Next, we'll click Execute. Best Authority tells us that 5 authorities were modified. We can see that all of these items are now authorities in the state statutes group. But if you look in the document itself, you'll see that the document text has not been modified. Back in the suspects group, the next suspect we see is part of a very long citation. With long, complicated citations, sometimes Best Authority will miss part of the citation. We can use the mark function to include all of the citation in its authority. We just select the entire citation text, right-click, and choose Mark, then Mark Long. We verify that the authority text appears as we wish, then click OK. The full citation is now included and its authority has been added to the Federal Cases group. Let's collapse all of our groups again and navigate to the Suspects group to take care of the last remaining suspect. This suspect is also a phrase in a sentence and not an actual citation, so we'll unmark it as well. Now we've taken care of all the suspects. At this point, if we were proofing a real document, we would scroll through the highlighted document to see if there are any citations that Best Authority missed, or whether there are citations which were only partially marked. However, to save time in this video, we'll move on to Phase 2 of our proofing. In our first class during Phase 2, we looked through the TOA preview for any authorities that did not appear as we wished, which we'll do again now. We can also open the review tree into Authority View that shows all the group headings and authorities, just as in the TOA preview, but without the page numbers. As we scroll through the TOA preview, the first issue we come across is that there are 3 entries in the Federal Statutes group for 5 U.S.C. Section 1104, just with different subsections. The attorney may have indicated that these should be treated as a single authority, ignoring the subdivisions. We can accomplish this using the Merge Authorities function. We simply select all 3 authorities in the review tree, right-click, and choose Merge Authorities. The first authority is selected as the text we wish to use, so we just click OK. We can now edit the authority to remove the subsection and click OK again. Now you can see that the three authorities have been merged into one single authority. As we continue scrolling through the TOA preview, the next issue we see is that there are some authorities in the state statutes group with California Code of Civil Procedure abbreviated, and some authorities are spelled out entirely. While this is often done in the text of a pleading, most authors would like for all authorities in the TOA to have a consistent appearance. We can take care of this quickly using the Replace Text feature. We'll select all of the Cal Code entries, right-click, and choose Replace Text. In the Find What field, we type the abbreviated text Cal period Code Civ period Proc period, and in the Replace With field, we type the full form California Code of Civil Procedure. Now we click Execute and get a confirmation that three authorities were modified. We can see that all of the California Code authorities are now consistent, but again, the document text has not been changed. If we click on the authority immediately above all of the California Code of Civil Procedure authorities, we see that this is a reference to the author's footnote relative to the use of section abbreviations. This text should not appear in our TOA, so we simply right-click and unmark it. Take a look at all of the authorities for California Code of Civil Procedure. If you're familiar with California pleading styles, you might wish to create a subgroup for these authorities, so let's do that now. We can right-click on the first entry and choose Create Subgroup. Then we'll check that the first line text appears as we wish and click OK. Next, in the Other Authorities group, we see a single authority that lists two very different sections of the same code. The attorney has indicated that these sections should be split into two separate authorities. Let's consult the TOA advisor again to see what we should do. This time when we open the TOA advisor, notice that the heading at the top says Review, Statutes, and Rules, whereas last time when we were in Suspects, it said Review, Suspects. That's because the TOA advisor is context sensitive, meaning that it provides information relevant to where you are in the review tree. The second category of problems in the TOA advisor list says one authority should be multiple authorities. This is like the problem currently at hand. When we click the first topic under that heading, it gives an example, and the suggested solution says that we should mark the authority to include only the first section number as a new authority. Then mark the text for the second section number and create a new authority. Then type in the statute or rule name in the Edit Authority dialog to include the full statute information. Let's follow the instructions from the TOA advisor. We select the first part of the citation in the document text that includes the first section. Right-click and choose Mark, then Mark Long. We edit the authority to remove the extra section symbol, but before we finish creating the first authority, we'll highlight everything except for the section number and copy it to the clipboard for future use. Next, we'll click OK. Now, back in the document, we select the section number and choose Mark again. We paste the copied text and click OK to create the second authority. We now have two authorities, one for each section, instead of one authority for two sections. As you can see, Mark is one of the most powerful tools that Best Authority provides because it allows us to put anything we need into the TOA regardless of whether it was found during the scan. Now, let's talk about how to use cut and paste in best authority. Basically, almost any time that a group, authority, or citation appears in the wrong location in the review tree, you can use cut and paste to set it right. For example, cut and paste functionality can be used to move citations from one authority to another, change the order of authorities within a group, move authorities from one TOA group to another, or change the order of groups. As I said, we can use the cut and paste method to move a citation from one authority to another. On rare occasions, you may find that Best Authority has linked a short cite or an id to the wrong long citation. Cut and paste can be used to move the short cite to its proper authority. In version 2 of Best Authority, we used the Assign to Long feature to accomplish this task. In version 3, we've simply changed the terminology so that it's consistent with other cut and paste functions. I'll show you an example where we need to cut a short cite and paste it to a long cite. If I click on this id, the red border around California Code of Civil Procedure section 739B tells us that the id is linked to this authority. However, if we read the sentence, we can see that the author is using the id reference for the Jacquard case and not the statute citation. To correct this, we can right-click on the id in the review pane and choose Cut, then select the Jacquard case in the document, right-click on its authority in the review pane, and choose Paste Citation. By the way, when the citation you're moving is an id, Best Authority provides an even simpler way to accomplish the task. I'll click Undo and then show you that other method. We can simply select the id in the document, right-click and choose Relink id Citation. Then a dialog opens that tells us to select the citation to which we want to link the id, and then choose Set. So we'll select Jacquard in the document and choose Set. Easy, right? Let's talk some more about other ways to use cut and paste. It can also be used to change the order of authorities within a group. For example, we might be filing in a court which requires the main authorities for each group or point to be listed at the top of the group. We can simply right-click on an authority such as John Smith Treatise and click Cut. Then we'd select the first 8 Miller and Starr authority, right-click, and choose Paste Before. Now the John Smith Treatise is at the top of the group. We also see in the group name the words Manual Sort in parentheses. This tells us that one or more authorities have been manually sorted in this group. Finally, let me show you how to use a few simple functions, including cut and paste, to create a new group and heading for your TOA. Let's say that we want to create a new group called Local Statutes and move all of the Sonoma County Code authorities to the new group. We'll start by right-clicking on the Other Authorities group and choosing Add Group. We'll call this group Local Statutes and click OK. Now we'll click on the Search tab to search for all authorities with the word Sonoma. We select them in the list by selecting the first one, holding Shift and selecting the last one, or by pressing Ctrl-A to select them all, then right-click and cut. Then we go back to the All tab, select the new Local Statutes group, right-click, and choose Paste Autosort. By the way, any new citations added to this document that may fall in the category of a local statute will not automatically get added to this group. In order to have citations added to a group automatically, we would need to set the citation type and geoscope to local. You can learn more about group properties in our Options and Schemes tutorial. Now, let's look at the new group Local Statutes. It contains the Sonoma County Code statutes that we wanted, but the group order is incorrect. I'll collapse all of the groups so we can more easily see the group order. The Local Statutes group should come before the Regulations group, not after it. The reason this happened is that when we added the group, we selected Other Authorities. Adding a group always adds the new group above the selected group. But how can we fix this? By using cut and paste. We just right-click on Local Statutes and choose Cut, then select Regulations, right-click and choose Paste. We can see that the groups are now in the correct order. Okay, we've finished all of our editing and can now build the final TOA. Let's take a look at our finished product. Let's review the additional editing techniques we've learned in this tutorial. First, we learned that we can use the Combine Split Authority function to put two halves of suspect citations back together if they were separated by extra text. Next, we learned how to use Replace Text to correct many similar suspects at one time, and we also learned how to use Replace Text to make authorities appear consistently in the TOA. We learned how to use Merge Authorities so that multiple authorities referencing the same section could appear as one authority. Additionally, we learned how to split one authority containing two sections into two separate authorities using the mark function. We also learned how to use cut and paste to move citations from one authority to another, to change the order of authorities within a group, to move authorities from one TOA group to another, and to change the order of groups. We learned that we can create subgroups, which is a popular form of formatting, especially in California. And we learned how to consult the TOA advisor to find out how to solve common TOA editing problems. In our next video, we'll provide information on additional topics that cover specific editing scenarios. That tutorial is organized into chapters so that you can choose the individual topics you wish to watch. The topics covered in the 103 training video include how to designate certain sections in a document to be excluded during the scan using the Scan Exclusions feature, how to help Best Authority identify local or specialized citation terms by adding them to the Best Authority dictionary, how to tailor the view in the review pane for your convenience, how to add an asterisk to the left margin of a TOA entry for jurisdictions that require it for points relied upon, how to convert the BA metadata to native word fields so that final processing can be done by someone who doesn't use Best Authority, how to remove all of the BA metadata from a document, how to use Best Authority in Microsoft Word to help you create a table of authorities for a WordPerfect document, and last but not least, how to create a combined table of contents and table of authorities, sometimes called a table of points and authorities. Thank you for watching the Best Authority 102 tutorial. Please remember to consult the Help drop-down if you need further information on using Best Authority.